Hi there. Today's cancer myth buster is we don't know what causes cancer. This was another one of those myths that I was pretty fascinated with because there's some really clear and I think compelling data. And one is that when we test people to see what genetic mutations they have in their tumors or their cancer cells, what we find is that those mutations were not mutations they were born with. So the mutations in the actual cancer, those are referred to as somatic mutations. And the mutations that people are born with, those are called germline mutations. So think of it as they're both mutations, but one, we got just from being born or from our mothers and fathers. And then the other happened to us after birth, which means that something from the environment damaged our cells, causing these mutations. We now know today there's estimates of about 86,000 chemicals in the environment. That's a lot of chemicals. These chemicals are so pervasive around the world that every single human being that we have ever tested, we find chemicals in their body. And those chemicals typically come in three different forms. We would categorize some as environmental toxins. Second category would be mycotoxins, and the third category would be heavy metals. The environmental toxins, that's typically the stuff you hear like when there's a chemical spill and some chemical got dumped into the environment. There's been a lot of attention to this in the news recently in different states throughout the United States. Mycotoxins are a little bit trickier in that they're naturally occurring. They're typically from mold or fungi, and they may not be easy to see. They could be stuff, it could be stuff in the air that you breathe in. It could be stuff like the black mold you always hear about in areas that are damp or wet. And the heavy metals, those are basically chemicals or I guess very heavy ions or metals like mercury, uranium, substances like that, lead. And those substances, when they're present, they could displace other minerals in the body that you need for a healthy function. And so the significance of all these different types of chemical exposures is that they can damage DNA. And after repeated exposure, there's some estimates that after 8 to 10 times of DNA damage, we start to lose the ability to repair that DNA, and then ultimately that cell becomes a cancer cell. And so what I'm saying here is that we know that the majority of cancers that people have, and this is not just the United States, this is worldwide, the majority of these cancers, some estimates for given cancers, as many as 90%, come from the environment. They don't come from, like, this person wasn't born with a mutation that will cause that cancer. And so despite knowing that fact, and despite knowing the fact that there's all these chemicals in the environment around the world, you don't see any of the giant cancer treatment centers, the multi-billion-dollar centers that say, hey, we treat cancer. You don't see any of them testing for environmental toxins, mycotoxins, and heavy metals. And you would think logically, well, if we know that most of these mutations are from the environment, and we know there's all this stuff in the environment that could damage our DNA and cause these mutations that lead to cancer, why wouldn't every giant center be testing for them? So that's a question that they would have to answer. What I could tell you here at Causenta, what we figured out is numerous ways to get these chemicals out of people's bodies. And we figured out how to do this in a way where we could teach this to you. So after you visit us and get different therapies and treatments, you leave not only getting the actual treatment, but you leave with the knowledge and education of how to actually do this stuff on your own. And most of it is very affordable. And so I hope that today you got some informative information to help you get some more awareness about what could be causing cancer in your body, and that there is options, or there is hope in terms of what we could do to help reduce the damage or the threat to your DNA.